Alright guys, if you have enough supplies at opening to buy an arch, this is what your layout would look like. I have 700 residents, so I need 1400 happiness. This arch is going to give me 675, but we'll start deleting tile houses just one at a time till we get happiness. And then there's also room to delete a butcher for an amphitheater if we need more than that. Buy your first 3 expansions, left or right side, doesn't really matter. I did the right side on this round just because it had fewer obstacles. Buy your first 3 expansions with shards, and then plant a goods building, piggyback off of one of your goods. So I used jewelry, and I only had to buy 2 pieces of jewelry, so that was 3,000 of each resource. To get your 4th expansion. You don't have to rush the goods building, you can wait an hour for it. I did rush it though. If you do not have enough supplies, and actually before I do that, the goal here is to accumulate an equal amount of coin and supply going into the next round to get arch number 2, just so we don't have to mess with happiness as much. So I have an equal amount of tile house and butcher. If you don't have enough supplies at opening to get an arch, this is what your setup will look like. Oh, and before I do that, actually, I've mentioned this in other videos before, but before you actually start your city, contribute to the map a little bit. I think I'm still on this one, yeah. Because there's a possibility that you'll get coins or supplies to help you start your settlement. So do that first. That way when you jump into your settlement, you have an accurate idea of how many resources you're working with. So this city, I didn't have enough supplies at opening to do an arch. I did 2 amphitheater. You can see that my happiness isn't quite where it needs to be. But I planted a goods building. I am going to rush that. I think we need 8. Yeah, I've got 22, so we need 8. Let's see. 12 is going to be the most cost effective. There's no point in leaving this goods building planted, because after we get this expansion, we're going to need to use a different resource to piggyback for her 5th expansion, just because you don't have enough resources to run. So let's do the math on that. That would be 60. So I would need 3 repetitions of the 20 count. I would need 3 repetitions over here, so that would be 63,000 of each resource, and you're just not going to have that in these opening phases. Not to spare anyways. That would be better used towards getting a farm or an arch, you know. So we're done with that for now. Let's see, I need 1 extra road down here. We're going to put a butcher in here. Don't have room for another butcher down here. But we'll just do, I guess, another tile house. We could fit 2 tile houses in there. That's fine. We can delete them if we need to. We've got surplus coin. So this expansion you can reconfigure to fit some more production buildings in there if you want, or we could put amphitheater down there. Let me do the math, figure out what's going to work better. I think the extra butcher is actually going to help us more in the long run. So we'll fit that in here. And we've actually got room for another tile house as well. So even though this is going to mess up our happiness, before I add this other tile house, let's see what we're going to get. We'll be getting 5,700 off the tile house. It costs 2,500 to plant. So even though we don't have the happiness, we're still going to be making a profit on these tile houses. And then as we delete them, that profit will go up. So I'm going to actually waste one just so you can see how much that's going to improve the collection. So we're getting 5750 with this house. We'll collect that, delete it. Now we jump up to the neutral happiness metric, and the next house we collect is 7,000 now. So collect that, delete it. So that don't be discouraged by having that negative happiness up there. It's actually pretty easy to get back on track. And then we do have this same space down here that I have in my main city, where we can add an additional amphitheater if we need to. But this city, compared to my main city, has pound for pound, I've got more butchers than tile houses because we didn't have enough supplies for the arch at opening. So we do need to kind of catch up on the supply side more so than the coin. Does that make sense? So the upcoming collection on this, let's assume houses we collect everything at 100% average. That'd be around 60,000 coins, so we'd have 130,000 coin total. And then 10 butchers, those will all be collected at full happiness. There's no reason not to. So 10 butchers times 10,000 piece would give us just over 100,000 on the supply side. So that's enough for arch. And then once we plant the arch, you won't have much resources left after that, but you will have enough to do the arch. And then your layout will shift into this. So let me get into it. And then your layout will shift into this. So my other city has 10 butchers. This also has 10 butchers. But I have more space because I don't have the amphitheaters in this city. I have the arch. That's the advantage of doing the arch. So if you can't do it at opening, use the layout from my other world, and then this will be the layout after your first collection. So I've heard a lot of people say, your layout doesn't work because no one has that much resources to start. But that's not completely true. There's actually a lot of people that are getting enough QI hardware to have those resources to start. So for a lot of people, this is actually a viable layout. If you don't have the head start, though, you can still achieve this layout by Thursday night. So it's still opening day. You're just one collection behind, essentially. So my other world has absolutely zero QI attack boost, red or blue. I think I have like an extra 2 goods to start, maybe, just from one of these Christmas buildings. It's pretty bare bones, and it's an Iron Age city. So, like, even absolute bare bones city, you can still achieve this layout on the first day. Big difference between the two worlds. 10 butchers in both, and we're going to assume that we're collecting butchers at full happiness, because if I have 450 extra residents, I should be able to delete enough houses and plant amphitheater in the housing spots. You might need to rearrange a little bit, but just get it done. You'll have enough surplus population to delete your housing to balance your happiness, and then collect all your supplies at complete happiness. So that'll give us another 100,000 over here for arch number 2. The reason, the difference between the two worlds, though, is that I have 14 tile houses here versus 9 in Arvahal. And the purpose of that is to ramp up our coin production for the purpose of getting a farm. So even though I had enough resources to plant a tailor or a cottage at opening, I spent the extra resources on the goods cycle to get the expansion I need, and then just fill up as much space as you can with these cheap buildings. Save what you start with from the opening, and then that way you have a head start to get a farm with expansion number 5 is usually how I do it. So this next collection will go to arch number 2, possibly upgrade a house to a cottage if I have enough supplies, but then we'll plant the goods building in anticipation of expansion number 5, which I'm looking at this one right here. And that at that point, so currently our collections with 14 tile houses, let's assume we're collecting at 100% average. Some of them are going to be at, the negative happiness, but some of them will be at euphoric. So let's assume 100% average. The collection with 14 of them is going to be what is that, like 70,000, 80,000, something like that, in coin, which is not enough to buy a farm in a single collection, right? Um, but if we're intentional about scaling up our resources equally, in order to get arch number 2 and collect all these tile houses at full happiness, roughly 10,000 of each, that'll be 140,000 in coin. So 70,000 coin, even plus what I already have, is not enough to buy a farm. But 70,000, or sorry, 140,000 plus what I have is plenty to buy a farm. That's the purpose of not planning the farm at opening. I know that's a popular idea. I get that. The the problem with it, and I've said this before in other videos, but the problem with farm at opening, yes, you need to increase your supply production to get an arch. I get that. But the problem with planning the farm at opening is that it consumes so much of your coin collection, as well as space, that you don't, even if you're getting 70,000 out of coin, but you've depleted your entire coin bar on the farm at opening, it's going to take you two cycles to get back to an arch, you know? But if you do it the other way around, where if you plant an arch at opening and then the second arch on your next collection, you essentially create extra real estate. So that's the big difference here. I have an extra 5 houses in this world because of this arch versus the amphitheater. So those extra 5 houses, assuming full happiness, those extra 5 houses represent 50,000 coin. So instead of depleting all of my coin on opening day to buy a farm, I'm going to use the space that I have to increase my coin output, so that when I do buy a farm, I can buy a farm and an expansion in the same round. Does that make sense? So the 5th expansion I need is going to be the same thing. I just need 2 goods of something. 32 goods of something. So it's going to cost like 20,000 of each resource. I guess 40,000, whatever. Pretty cheap though. So the benefit there is, instead of spending all of your resources on a farm, because it's going to increase your productivity, that's true, but you're increasing productivity on a smaller grid, right? But if you scale up your resources first, then when we go to plant a farm, we're not replacing butcher and tile house, we're just adding a farm plus extra space. So you're, does that make sense? Am I explaining that well? I'll try to rephrase it. So I started this setup with about 270 coin and then 120 supplies. So I could have easily planted a farm. The problem, and what I'm trying to rephrase here, is that planting that farm, yes, we would replace a butcher with extra supplies, but we would also lose 20,000 coin on the footprint of the farm. And we have a surplus of coin now, but we're not generating as much of it. We're only getting 70 or 80,000 because we've got to manipulate our happiness. And in Arvahar world, we're getting a lower coin production, not necessarily because we have to manipulate happiness as much. It's like delete 2 tile houses over there. But the limitation there is that there's a lot of space being consumed by amphitheaters. So both worlds have a surplus of coin, but a lower coin production. And if you delete these tile houses in favor of a farm, you'll be even farther behind on the coin side of things, to the purpose of getting an arch, you know? But if you do the arch first, you have enough resources to keep those 2 tile houses, add an expansion, and just increase your supplies without affecting your coin metric. Does that make sense? I think that's a better way of explaining it. So I guess a final note, just on overall strategy. I do ballistas, obviously, Legionnaire barracks, and archery range. You've seen in my previous videos that as the season goes on, once I start getting farms, I reorganize this left side over here into housing, and I plant an archery camp that I just leave disconnected. And there's 2 purposes to that. It's the donation node that's a pinch point, and then it's actually also a pretty good fighting troop. Plus they're cheaper than ballistas to print. So for the first few levels, I basically just use archers. You can auto battle ballista versus ballista, but anything with a horse in it, you want to use an archer. So I primarily use archers early on to fight as well as donate. So I don't even have a ballista camp until usually the third or fourth collection when I actually need to start printing a couple troops. Definitely don't leave it planted permanently. In the early stages, it's better to print it or plan it, wait an hour, print 1 or 2 repetitions, like the bare minimum that you need, and then replace it with a butcher so that you're still maintaining that production. In later levels, if you want to leave a permanently planted ballista, it's not a huge deal. But in the early phases, you really want to focus on your resource production. This world has enough inherent attack boost for QI that I can survive pretty comfortably on the map until like level 3 or 4, just manual battling. And then on 3 or 4, I don't really lose troops, but they get injured often enough where in order to use all of my actions, I do need to have a surplus of troops, but I don't need 50 of them. In my other world, where I don't have that attack boost, so this is another common complaint that I hear from people about my system. Well, you have so much attack boost that you don't need those troops. I don't have that much attack boost, so I have to print 1,000,000 troops. Okay, that really isn't accurate though. I'm gonna jump over to my other world and show you manual battling with zero boost. Okay, so this is Town Hall in Otherworld. And you can see that my Quantum Incursion, I have 0% boost on each thing. And then I have a couple of these Christmas buildings for the resource side, but 0%. So the idea that you need more troops is not necessarily correct. This is a stronghold, which really isn't the ideal tile to be hitting. There's 20%. Let's try auto battling. Might get one injured. Yeah. There you go. I'm hoping for a horse combo. There's one dead. Let's see if we get a horse combo. Nope. I'll have to wait for that one to heal. Even without attack boost, you can manual battle against horse combinations. I donated all my horses. But you can auto battle with horse combinations with this and use your archers to take out the horses first, and then ballistas to clean up the archers behind them. So you can manual battle. You're going to get injuries and stuff, but you don't necessarily need more troops. I already lost one ballista, so I'm going to have to print a couple, but I don't necessarily need 50. It's better to spend those resources on an aqueduct throughout these levels so that your troops are stronger. You don't need to print more of them, you just need to make them stronger. Does that make sense? Because once I hit, difficulty level 5, I have 0% attack boost. I could throw 1,000 ballista at it, and they're all going to die anyways. So the quantity doesn't matter as much as the strength. I would discourage you from doing victory towers early on, just because they chew up your happiness more per tile than the aqueduct. Aqueduct does take longer to build, but just be intentional about planning it at night after the day is done so it's ready for the next difficulty level in the morning. Does that make sense? This is a wrap, but I hope this is helpful for you. This is information that I've covered before in my other videos, but this hopefully kind of streamlines the process so it's all in one place for you. Hope it helps the more experienced players with the layout from my career world, as well as the newer players who can use this layout. So I hope it helps both of you. On the map side, coordinate with your teammates for this donation node. So I've donated a lot, but I also know that I'm not really going to be able to fight a whole lot. If everyone chips in 4 or 5 troops each round as a team, you can chip away at that pretty quickly, and everyone will still be able to fight as well. Like theoretically, if I was actually a fighter here, which I'm not, I have 0% boost, right? I'm not going to be a top fighter here. But theoretically, if I was, or if Zekius was, he's donated so many troops that he's going to be kind of handicapped on the fight nodes. So share that burden with your teammates, and everyone chips in on that. And the advantage with that, these early resource nodes, I would ignore those, honestly. It's better to use the coin to plant an archery camp, which is the cheapest and smallest troop that you can print. Plant an archer camp and donate it so that you can move on to these other nodes that are not strongholds, right? That's the pinch point, and this should be priority number one. Going back to the settlement, I think this is my final idea. In Conrear, I end up, in the old system, I was getting around 13 expansions and just scaling up my production ad infinitum, and not so much the attack, because in the old system there were donation nodes on the higher levels. New system, there's no donation node after level, or starting level 10, I guess. There's no donation nodes. So it is better to prioritize your attack. In Conrear, I'm stopping at 10 expansions now, and starting to transition to the attack side of things on like difficulty level 8 or 9. This world, I'm obviously going to have to focus on the attack sooner, so I'll probably stop at 8 expansions. And those extra expansions do help. Like I said, the logic here is instead of deleting a butcher and house to plant a farm, it's better to scale up your production in order to get enough resources for an expansion as well as a farm in the same collection. And keep in mind, you can piggyback off your starting resources. So I only need 38 jewelry. Let's say I only need 38 jewelry in order to get my 5th expansion. That's 40,000 of each resource. If I can continue scaling up that production and just add the farm instead of deleting a tile house to fit it in, the advantage with that is on a bigger city grid, instead of generating 100,000 of each resource on a maxed out 4x4, if you have 8 expansions, you're generating 350 of each resource. So you can print more troops as well as more aqueducts per collection. Does that make sense? And it's a pain in the butt on the first few difficulty levels because you're surviving like you're hanging on by a thread in the map, but it is worth it in the higher levels to ramp up that production. Anyways, this world I'll probably stop at 8 expansions and start prioritizing those resources towards attack earlier on. So I'll print enough ballista and maybe 1 or 2 aqueducts early on, just enough to survive, and then start transitioning pretty much to only attack by level 6, I would say here. This is my first QI here, so we'll have to play around with that, but that's kind of my gut feeling. I will keep the Arvahall people posted on this new world, though. So, alright guys, I hope it's helpful. I'll talk to you later. Bye.